Over 250 years ago, southern Illinois was a wild frontier. Soon, this area and its native inhabitants would be forever changed by the arrival of the French.
The French colonial empire started at Quebec. It went all the way down to Mobile, Alabama, and Biloxi, Mississippi, and New Orleans. This is part of the connection, the land bridge between Quebec and Louisiana.
Over there is the partially reconstructed Fort de Chartres. That fort served France as the military, economic, and governmental center of the Illinois country.
This location was the hub of French government, French commerce, and French military control of the entire area below the Great Lakes.
In 1673, they arrived in what soon became known as the Illinois country, named after the Native American tribes that resided in the region. To establish trade with the Indians, they constructed outposts on the Illinois, Mississippi, Wabash, and Ohio rivers.
The reason for its existence was the fantastic cropland from the Mississippi River over to the limestone bluffs. They grew wheat. In 1759, they shipped 400,000 tons of finished wheat out of this fort.
Most of the trade initially was set up around the river systems, and if you look at maps of where French versus English settlements sat up, you'll see many, many more French settlements setting up along the rivers as opposed to the English, who are setting up along the eastern seaboard.
In the middle 1700s, okay, anything past the Appalachian Mountains was all French.
The French occupied Fort Massac in this entire area from 1702 to 1764 before handing it over to the British.
Fort Massac was established by the French in 1757 to protect the shipments of food supplies going to the northern French forts up on the Ohio. Fort de Chartres, which is on the Mississippi, was the regional governing fort to the area. And that area also had a large French colony. Charles Philip Aubry was ordered to come down here and investigate actually some British and native infiltration and to select a spot for an outpost.
They were guarding the Ohio River, they were guarding the Mississippi River, and all the places where the natives would come to trade. They would bring their goods, their furs and stuff here to Massac.
Because they were traveling up the rivers to establish, it was very easy, or easier perhaps, to get it there than it would be to carry overland.
In about 1717, they divided the territory up where New Orleans governed the southern part of New France, and Illinois was sort of the cutoff. Fort de Chartres was the regional government, and Fort Massac was actually an outpost to Fort de Chartres. Initially, it was called Fort Ascension.
This is where the French would have been when Fort Massac was first built in 1702 to 1764. Well, none of the buildings are here because the Native Americans in the area have already burned it down because this was in their hunting area.
I think the most interesting thing to me is to know the people that came before me here. We're talking Georges Gillard, with the Lewis and Clark expedition. He hunted and trapped for the fort here.
I portray a trader, someone who would work with the natives, goes to the village, lives with them, marries a native woman, so my wife is native. My daughter and my son would be half native, half French. And if you live with the natives and you marry into the family, you get very good relationships with it.
When it got to the warfare, a lot of times the Native Americans would choose sides on which group gave them the best gifts.
Here, what they were guarding was against the English and English traders, colonial traders coming over here and trading with all the natives from the west.
The French arrived in Illinois in 1673 to colonize the area with forts, towns, and posts, and to convert the Native Americans in the surrounding area to the Catholic Church.
Well, usually the French assimilated well with the Native Americans. They did not try to necessarily change them other than their religion. They did try to convert them to Catholicism, but they didn't try to go in and actually take over the tribes, where the Spanish came in and just tried to take over or wipe them out, and actually the British did too.
Originally the French were here mostly for the trade. We traded for furs with the natives, and we had a very good symbiotic relationship. We listened to them, they listened to us. Anything that we did as French, we would ask permission. This is your land, not ours. And we want to be your brother, we want to work here and work with you. If you let us, go ahead and take some of your beaver or some of your deer for food or whatnot, well, in return, then we'll go ahead and give you, let's say, blankets or help shelter your women in the cold, snowy weather in the fort, if you'll let us build the fort here.
And they intermarried with the natives, all the way from Michigan all the way down into New Orleans.
That's Georges Girard. His father was French Canadian, and his mother was a country wife.
The French, unlike the British, absorbed the Native Americans. They dealt with them, they intermarried with them, they traded with them, learned their language, and the natives also learned French. And by the second generation, many of the families that had been founded in French colonial America were in fact part native.
When the French came out here, the Indians were already trading in slave captives. And so the French just took advantage of that, and they would trade for slaves as well. The American Indians had no concept of owning land. They controlled territory for hunting and stuff like that, and they would defend that territory against enemy tribes.
This part of southern Illinois was a territory for the Indians, a hunting territory.
The Europeans and then the Americans were the ones that came and said, okay, this is my land now, I own it. That was a foreign concept to the American Indians. The French didn't do that. They didn't come and claim the land. The French were more interested in, the commerce and having good relations. So that's how they get the reputation of being more friendly to the Indians.
The French would not have survived without the Native Americans. They intermarried. The French are elitist but not racist. That's the difference. So they always intermarry with Native American. So most of the Native Americans today have French blood, and most of the people who are French descent in North America have Native American blood.
By the 1750s, fear of invasion by the British led French officials to again plan for a major post on the Mississippi. Construction of an earthen fort began here about 1759, but it was never completed.
War started when Washington's and his men ambushed an officer by the name of Jumonville. His real name was Vallier, and he was an ex-commander at Fort Deschartres.
In 1763, the Treaty of Paris ended the French and Indian War, but it took the British 2 years more to get an expedition to actually arrive here.
The legacy of the towns, Fort Deschartres, Fort Massiac, Prairie du Rocher, a lot of the towns along the river. If you look at a lot of the land grants and the shape of the farms, you will see a lot of it is done in the French style.
When the French lost the French and Indian War, they were devastated. The British came over here around 250 years ago, taking control of the Illinois country, pushing the French out.
I can't help but wonder how much life would be different now had the French remained in power with the attitude that they had then of live and let live, and let's work together.
I would like to thank all the reenactors, historians, and writers for helping me explore and discover France's last frontier.
It's just amazing what this little place and this little part of the world did, and who went through here.